Next on the agenda is Brian Tessier, and Brian has the job that I would have loved to have had in running innovation. So he is the Vice President of Innovation for Schneider Electric. And Schneider Electric is a company that I refer to often for saying what they were going to do in a roadmap and actualizing it. So a lot of times people say, well, how do I get started on change, Lora? And the best way is to make a bold statement, come up with a roadmap, and start to execute the roadmap. And this roadmap started with Annette Clayton's vision. And Annette had this idea of driving digital innovation and doing it in a step change fashion. So Brian has the great honor of leading that effort. And you know, Schneider is an interesting company because I find there are many Schneiders. There's the European Schneider that is a bit older, and then there's the Chinese Schneider that's kind of very, very aggressive. But I'm going to let Brian tell the story. So Brian, why don't you come to the stage?
Good afternoon. So, welcome to Lora Palooza. So I love coming to this event every year for a couple of different reasons, but the primary reason for me is somebody that's really supposed to be pushing the boundaries. This is an opportunity for everybody in the room to really suspend their disbelief. So we continue, as Lora kind of alluded to earlier on in her presentation, we've been asking the same questions, we've been trying to solve the same problems for the last 10 to 15 years. And there's no way we're ever going to break through if we continue to do things the exact same way that we've always done them. So what I'm going to do today is talk to you a little bit about our journey. I started in my role and in this function, which we created in April 2016. And that was really probably the first year that I started working with Lora. So we've been very tightly connected through the entire journey. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's happened since we talked to you last. And then hopefully put a little bit of a frame around all the things that we're trying to do. I know there's a lot of talk out there about different components of innovation. There's a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of people that are absolutely abusing terminology. We're going to try to clear some things up for you and maybe give you a little bit of a schema of how we're affecting the change and hopefully help you to start to think about that way too. So first and foremost, Lora wanted me to really kind of give you a clarification of what we consider digital innovation. And being a very large engineering company, for the most part, traditionally, this was about innovating in our products and our services. But as we continue to move on, we're seeing that with all of the enablers that are available to us today, that we really need to innovate in our business models, in all the platforms that we actually deploy, and also be making sure that we're integrated with all of our customers inside and outside the organization. Most people don't know an awful lot about this company. It's probably one of the largest companies you've never really heard about before. But we've grown dramatically through acquisition over the course of the maybe last 20 to 30 years. And as a result, we have an awful lot of complexity. This is something that's helping us get our hands around that complexity. So we're looking to digitize all the components, not only of our supply chain, but the components of energy which help service our customers. Once we do that, one thing that makes digital innovation really go forward very quickly is because now once you've got that digitized process, we've got the oil, the data, whatever it is you're actually monitoring, then we can store it. We can transform it. We can redirect and transmit it other places where it can actually start to add some value. And we can also trace it, which for us in supply chain tracing is absolutely a really, really big deal. Last but not least, this starts to open up opportunities for us to create new values. So we have a very long product life cycle. We make electrical equipment that handles all of the components of electrical distribution all the way from the plant to the plug. So it takes us a long time to develop new products. Today, though, with the democratization of technology, availability of software and AI, we are now starting to harness all these things, and we're creating new value in places that these businesses never existed before. We're creating apps. We're writing algorithms. We're interfacing directly with the large data sources that our customers have, and we're using our knowledge of the industries to help transform their ability to actually move forward. So how do we manage this whole innovation thing? So as I said, I started in April of 2016, and kind of the story, I think Lora kind of alluded to it a little bit, is I was working in a role in customer satisfaction and quality. where I was very, very close to my customers. Customers had problems. They had some pretty substantial issues. And my responsibility was to first make it right for the customer. So I did that. But as time went on, I began to see they need more. They deserve more. We can give them more. So in addition to doing the traditional process things that we had already laid out to address customer issues, I started developing technology solutions for my customers. And that can take the frame of, say you had a recall in a data center. A lot of our data center customers are relatively new businesses, so they don't have an awful lot of software infrastructure. So I wrote software to help them manage their fleet, to know where our products were, where the competitors' products were, so that it was easier for them, and they got a value add from going through this process with us. It doesn't forgive you of the issue that got you into that situation, but it really changes the tenor, the tone, and kind of the content of the relationship when you approach it as, I need to give you more to make it better. The frame that we build around all of these things to manage these large transformations is the Schneider Electric Tailored Supply Chain Connected 4.0. And what we tried to do was basically really get deep into specifically what our customers need. Tailor our models. We found our 11 customer segments, we found our 5 supply chain models, and what we tried to do is take advantage of the global footprint of this business. We can be closer to the customers, we can deliver value in ways that nobody else can, and we manage it through this process. We also are super invested in the concept of sustainability. We've been noticed multiple times by Gartner and other large organizations as being a leader for pushing clean energy, safe energy, sustainable and renewable energy, and very importantly, connected energy, so that we can help our customers make the most use of their energy and internally make sure that we're making the best decisions for our environment in order to continue improving our overall operational scope and the impact that we're having on our planet too. When we talk about connected, I think IoT is something that is very much discussed these days. For us, we're trying to digitize every breadcrumb in the trail of energy. We're trying to create digital twins of machines, equipment, not just new things, but old things as well. And this gives us the ability to really start to optimize, turn on the lights, understand what's really happening with your process. Many people want to digitize, but what they find is that once you get connected, you had an assumption about your process. A lot of the time, the data tells you you didn't really know that process so well. This allows us to really be introspective and understand how can we move in a different way. Along with the massive volume of data that we have, we're sitting on a treasure trove of information. It helps us to make more informed decisions in all the different attributes of our supply chain, from sourcing and procurement, through actual manufacturing and production, into delivery, and how do we plan moving forward? We tie them all together. So our overall mission, I started with Schneider in 1998. We've got a long history of large company programs, and these really help us to frame up the transformations. We started in 2005 to 2008 with the New 2 program, which was really around lean manufacturing. And in the recent years, as I had mentioned, we have very much grown through acquisition. It's been about creating one Schneider and making sure that all the bits and pieces that make us who we are well connected, and we have the ability to leverage all of those components to the value of the shareholders as well as to the customers and the environment. So the current program that we're working in is currently called Schneider is On, and we've iterated our tailored supply chain mission up to the 4th level now. So we've got all of the components of prior transformations, along with some additional simplification and injection of accelerators as well as enablers that are allowing us to go much more quickly with the tailored sustainable connected 4.0 platform. So this is what, in a nutshell, this entire model is. The thing I really want to talk to you about today is to kind of point out that innovation in supply chain is not existing as an island. This is part of the global strategy for transformation of the supply chain. So all of the different components really play, and the job of the innovation function which I run, is called CODI. It's the Center of Digital Innovation. Our goal is really to be the front door for innovation, to challenge the conventions, and also bring new things into the supply chain much more quickly than they organically would. So let's talk a little bit about what I do, how I do it, and what the function's all about. So first and foremost, CODI is the Center of Digital Innovation. If you think about the problems that you have when you're trying new things in your business, you find that the number one place you fall down is with the IT people, right? They don't speak the language of the vendor. They don't understand the process. That tends to be a very early failure point for a lot of these types of initiatives. So what we've done is, at the inception of the program, we brought IT in. My partner in crime is actually the leader of Schneider Digital for our supply chain. So in this way, he understands the things that we're thinking about, the architecture, the strategy, all these things. We talk about them together so that we have a structured plan to go forward, whether it's things like making sure that 5G penetration in different places is appropriate for our industrial manufacturing needs, all the way through optimizing the industrial footprint for things like AGVs, and how do we control and have a command and control structure to deal with those types of automation as well. My job is awesome because I'm also out there all the time. I'm at colleges, I'm at universities, I'm at startups, I'm at incubators. My goal is to find as much new stuff as I possibly can, and then work it together to try to understand, are there affinities between these different technologies and problems that we have, or solutions that we currently produce. And what we find that a lot of the breakthrough technologies that you talk about or you see on the news all the time, blockchain, artificial intelligence, in and of themselves, they're not really all that transformational. It comes between the pieces is where the value is usually really found. So we work very hard to make sure that we have the ability to understand the integration. And the other portion of what makes CODI different is we go very fast. So we run kind of a rotating portfolio of opportunities. In the average month, I can have between 30 and 50 different programs going on globally, and they run about 90 days. So just think about that for a minute. How many new things coming in, how many people we're exposing to new thought, new ideas, and new structures that never existed before. It's really starting to help us pivot the culture to one where we really are all trying to hack the supply chain at the same time. So last year, as a result of me sleeping about 3 hours a week, we came up with the concept of how do we mobilize resources without huge FTE headcount allocations going into an activity like this. So what we came up with is something that we call CODI X. So this is our extended network, and there are really two things that we try to do with this. One is to get more people to understand that it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, depending on the situation. We give these folks a lot of rope, and we hope they can be creative and artistic and really drive some different types of applications that nobody else has ever thought of. We also provide a managed structure so that we can help them be plugged into startups. Because there's only one of me. In the first 2 years of doing this job, it almost killed me, because I was on the road constantly trying to get as much stuff as I possibly could. We've got these centers actually set up in all the major geographies. Now they're plugged into the startup ecosystem. They're working with the universities. They've got that visibility, and they can bring it back to the central function. And we can help them figure out, how do we deal with it? What can we do with it? And is it right to go forward with it, or do we put it on the shelf and market to come back to it later? There's two ways that this works. One is we've got folks that are assigned to roughly 36-month duration leadership opportunities, and they represent the manufacturing base from an innovation perspective in their geography. Interesting people. I'd say kind of to focus a little bit on what makes these people appropriate for kind of driving change like this is you want your hackers. You want people that they go home at the end of the day, they can't leave it alone, they continue to prototype, they try things, they come back the next day, they have something else. The other thing that we found that really works for us from a people standpoint is we're a business of specialists. We're an engineering company. We're a 200-year-old French industrial manufacturing company. We have super deep engineering skills, and the culture is very much entrenched in that. What we want for this is to start finding generalists. So think about that for a minute. There's always going to be a place for your specialists, but in order to get over the hump, for example, with the resource constraints that we have with data science right now, people with other skills that we can upskill them on some of these silo-type knowledge bases gives us the ability to actually have practical application, as opposed to, like Lora said, not needing a translator. We have our subject matter experts physically working with AI, working with the vendors, so that they can develop applications that they can take to their boss. They can visualize things they were never able to even see before, and it helps us to actually get people excited and interested and to own something. They can own a piece of the answer. That is a huge, huge deal as far as the employee value proposition, and we found that it enriches what it's like to be an employee when you're involved in these kinds of things. So last but not least, we have a lot of small teams that we put together. So this year I launched an intern army. So I had about 25 interns around the world, which was absolutely fantastic, except my phone rang around the clock, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, in order to try to work through different things. But the other thing I would say to really think about if you're trying to democratize innovation in the supply chain is consider the low-cost resources, your young talent, your older talent even, to give them tools that they hear about and make it safe for them to play. One of the things that we've been pretty successful with is we created a program called Launchpad, where I would build kits of different types of technologies, whether it was augmented reality, IoT, persistence of vision, machine control, and I'd box them up, and I would send them to the regions. And then we'd have workshops. People could come in, learn about it, learn how to program with it, learn how to do different things, and then we let them take it to the floor, take it home. But we expect that you're going to come back and kind of present, what did you learn? People are super excited about this, and now we've got people who did not, in the past, have any interest maybe in software development. Now are considering, because they got to work with the platform, this is something that I might want to maybe be a manufacturing engineer in order to work on these types of technologies. So it's helping us to really change the dialogue around innovation from one that's really focused on the traditional R&D or product development to more looking at process and looking from the outside in. So when we talk about what do we really look at, the onset hypothesis for Schneider was that if you consider kind of the Gartner construct of the hype curve, we didn't do anything on that curve. We were super standard. We wanted tried and true. We were the people that bought Windows XP in 2005. You wanted to know that it worked. There was no risk to anything. We tried to stay very, very standard, and it was very difficult to move. Our primary focus is really going after all of this. Some of this stuff is still very pie in the sky. Obviously, as you go to the left, that's very immature technology. And as you go to the right, these are the things that you're starting to actually see pervasively at home. This is your Alexa. These are the connected devices, all the wearable devices that can give you biomedical information. All these things are coming to that side. But what we're trying to do is not only in the construct of what we need to do in supply chain, think about what the customers need and how can I combine these things so that I can create new opportunities to grow the business and actually really drive additional relationship, more revenue. It really changes the dialogue with customers. So just kind of a snapshot of what 2018 looked for us. We looked at over 100 different technologies. We identified about 210, and about 21 of those actually went out to the floor in a production type capability. So high mortality rate, but when you talk about innovation, really the concept needs to be, if I'm not failing, I'm not doing anything new. So we tend to go to the bleeding edge and then try to drag it back in. We also try to provision the different technologies based on alignment to the Hoshin-Conry, as well as the primary top supply chain technology trends and priorities for the leadership team, so that we can show that solid black line connection to trying to solve problems with things that we're actually working on. But there's still a fair amount of what we do that tends to be experimental in nature. So Kodiak's itself really took off this year. Right now we got about 40 active projects. Like I said, I've got 20 plus interns that like to call me at all crazy hours of the night. And the fun thing about this, as we're starting to close the first summer of the internship program, we have about an 85% rate of employees actually saying they want to come back. They want to continue to work with us during the school year, in addition to come back the following summer. This is an unheard of retention rate in some of the geographies that we're dealing with specifically around these things, because I had, for example, in China, I had 3 PhD data scientists. And heavy manufacturing, in a lot of cases, is not a particularly exciting or sexy place when you could go to a Google, a Facebook, a Twitter. One of the ones that's on everybody's mind that's a very customer-facing brand, but we're pulling PhD data scientists as a result of getting them involved, getting them to know the process, and giving them all the authority and autonomy that they need, along with substantial funding. So they go as far as they can, and they really, really want to continue to come back and work with us to drive this forward further. So what does kind of a day in the life, what does a proof of concept really look like? So there's a couple of different on-roads for this. On the one hand, if you think about all the goals that we're facing in supply chain, they tend to be the same thing every year. We're usually looking for a fraction of a percent. We're looking for a point here, a point there. We try to find those places where we believe that there's a transformational technology that we can apply to one of those, I'd say, stretch goals to try to go for a double-digit or a triple-digit improvement. The other way that it goes is sometimes the business unit or senior leadership will come to us and actually say, hey, you know what? This is something that we're very interested in, either from trying to place a strategic bet, or there's a new developing demand that we're just starting to pick up on now that we want to get out in front of. That's something that really kind of helps us as far as figuring out where do we go and make the investment first and foremost. Then we start to focus in on the strategic areas of opportunity. So what this means is we'll spend a lot of time with our customers. So I can't name names, but rhyme with frugal. A lot of the large internet companies are super eager as a customer to bring us in and make sure we completely understand their operation, the problems that they're facing, and this new generation of businesses is much, much more transparent about what they want a supplier relationship to be. All you need to do is ask. And all you need to do is be willing to have that kind of an engagement. And that's really helped us to push a lot of our programs forward where, the ROI might be somewhat nebulous, but when you've got a customer, you've got a blue chip that's willing to invest like that in the collaboration in the network, it really makes a big difference. And then when we start to go, we empower small teams, usually 7 to 8 people. We give them everything that they need. We give them a budget. We run a central budget in Coty, so there's no approval chain. So when we decide we're going to go do something, the buck stops here, and we make decisions immediately, which really allows us to continue to move forward and not get caught up in the procedural mechanisms of the 200-year-old French Industrial Corporation. And it's really been helpful to really empower people. And then last but not least, we bring them all back in. We do almost like a Y Combinator type demo day where we evaluate how did it go, what did we learn, what did we not learn, do we want to invest in it? If it's a startup, do we want to invest, do we want to buy, how do we want to handle it? But as we've gotten older and more mature in the function, we've worked a lot more with the M&A organization. We've got a strategy organization that has an innovation at the edge component where they're out actually almost doing scouting for us now, where they're considering making an evaluation. But one of the barriers that they've faced is everybody's got a cool PowerPoint. Everybody's got a YouTube video. But the difference between the PowerPoint and the YouTube video, is it going to work in my plant? That's a capability that I can give you. Where they work with us, we come in, we do a rapid demo, and then we're able to inform their decision a little bit more fluidly as far as what they can do moving forward. So you want to talk about some of the things that we went through on the journey. So that's what, April 2016. So we're well into the approaching 4th year on this party, which has been a lot of fun. And I think that, there were some things that I really expected to run up against that I didn't. There were some things that really surprised me. So this was my first global role. I had been a NAM guy my entire life. I've been in highly technical roles. I've had some quality customer satisfaction. I'm a Six Sigma Master Black Belt. I've done a lot of stuff in North America. Got a great network in North America. The differences between how NAM deals with innovation and all the other countries around the world, they are extremely, extremely different from one another. So for us, it was important for us to really try to spend some time to understand, develop relationships, and get into kind of breaking down the paradigms that allow people to make decisions. If you have any French colleagues that you work with, you find they're very procedural in nature, and it's about the debate. And as an American rolling in, I'm all, we're going to go do this is going to be awesome, we're going to have a great time. They want to have meetings before the meetings to talk about what we're going to talk about when we get into the meeting. And that whole process for people that are really about, ready, fire, aim, like Americans typically are, made it somewhat difficult to adapt to the situation. So there was a fair amount of education that needed to take place. Now, on the other hand, my friends in China and India, there is no governor on that throttle. They are wide, they would eat me alive. If I would give them 24 hours a day, they would have me 24 hours a day. So the balance is something that you need to figure out. How do we communicate about things in a way that doesn't make people scared? How do we communicate about things in a way that it doesn't feel like other initiatives where it's a PowerPoint or it's a video? Put it in their hands. Give it to them, get in the room with them, and spend the time so that they can actually do some muscle building with the technology. It really starts to demystify, and then they start to think about, okay, I could probably use this for this over in this plan. And that's what we really love, because then you start to see the network taking off, and we're getting calls from all over the place. The social networks are lighting up. I'm getting orders to my vendors because everybody wants to buy this stuff. That's the kind of thing that you need to kind of manage carefully as you start getting into change management. So the other thing that really has kind of made it really hard is we bought so many companies over the last 25 to 30 years, and admittedly, we could have done a much better job at federating all of our platforms. So my ERPs have ERPs. I have plants that don't have WMSs. I have plants that don't have QMSs. All the things that you think of as kind of core information systems. Now, don't get me wrong, they didn't go and buy a Manhattan. They've got something, but you're going to be disgusted when you actually see what it is. So being able to get in there, harvest the data, and help them get someplace else is something that we're really finding a lot of value in. And we're also finding that while we might like to do much more AI, machine learning, industrial automation, sometimes it's about the basics. And I can't remember who gave the talk last year when we were here. Maybe it was ABB or Rockwell. I was super impressed with that speaker because he talked about their digitization journey. Oh, is he here? No, oh, okay. He spoke about their digitization journey, and I'm going to be a little crude. They didn't do anything sexy. But what they did do is they did the hard work up front. They went after master data governance. They went after inventorying things. They knew who owned different processes. So that once they get that stuff straightened around, they're going to blow past everybody because they don't have all this legacy baggage rattling behind them as they're making their way down the tracks. So, I think that there's a huge component of that. And then, the other thing too is sometimes you have to start to convince your business that the traditional methods for solving problems need to be reconsidered. So kind of to that whole missing platforms, old platforms discussion, I've got a plant right now that was desperately in need of a WMS. There's no way they're going to be able to budget for Manhattan. So we're working with a startup, and we're putting them on a cloud WMS. This has never been done before for us. The level of freak out in different areas of the business as a result of moving stuff out there has been very interesting and very telling. But we started to understand how do we communicate about these things going through that project. And I think that, more and more for us, I'm really trying to find opportunities where we don't make huge investments in entrenched platforms, because then you own me. I've got no flexibility. You can hold me hostage, and the extensibility as far as getting in and out of your platforms is a question. This way, everything's in the cloud, and we're much, much more fluid as far as how do we deal with our management of our information, and we actually own the custody of the information in this model. So that's a huge one there. Balancing delivery of innovation today and tomorrow. So one of the things that was pretty interesting at the beginning is that the push based on our previous understanding of how long it takes to do new stuff was that they thought it was going to be 36 months before they saw anything. And then we started dropping dozens and dozens of completed projects on them. I think that in a lot of businesses, the ability to deliver success early is key, And also choosing the right technology so that you can drop technology in and actually win with it soon is important as well. When we work with our startups, one of the pitches that they get from me as far as coming to work with me instead of somebody else early on in their life cycle is, I've got 200 plants and 100 distribution centers in 44 countries, and you are welcome to sandbox here. But we make sure that we completely understand the capabilities of their offer so that we don't put them in a situation where they're going to lose. We want to be able to prove the technology in a fair way, but not cut the throat of a little vendor and demoralize as well as potentially, wash them out as we move forward. So, I think that one of the keys for us has been making sure that we're constantly churning new things out. One of the things that I've really struggled with is communication, because this is like the last thing I like to do. I am only up here because I owe her a lot. I'm that nerd that's in the basement hacking away, 22 hours a day. I like being that guy and in that place. And Spider-Man, where they say the guy in the chair, yeah, that's me. So what we're trying to do here is really enhance the way that we communicate about innovation. The topic can be scary, but I'm trying to take it off of the screen and put it in a box on your desk is where I'm going now. And it's been working pretty well, and I'd strongly recommend considering that as well. And then last but not least, as far as the things that we kind of experience, how do you start to find the right people to do this? So at first, it was really it was word of mouth. Leaders all had that guy that they thought was like the guy. And then there were a lot of pockets of specialities that really didn't get noticed very well. The way that we started to find how to surface these people was, one, by putting the technology out there so that they could see it, play with it. We did an awful lot of large innovation fairs where I would bring in 20 or 30 vendors, I'd bring in 20 projects, and we would run people through so that they could touch it, feel it, play with it, and really submit and indicate their interest to us, that they wanted to learn more about it, and they potentially wanted to be at least somewhat attached to the function. So our coffers, since we did that, really started to autofill, which has been a huge deal for us. But I think generally, kind of to Laura's point earlier, most of the supply chain professionals are very traditional in nature. And I've been placing bets and taking risks on different profiles, and it's worked out very, very well for me so far. So don't necessarily stick to the template. Consider the ability to draw on a wider body of knowledge in order to really kind of fill out what it is you're trying to accomplish. And then, just a few things that we've learned that I want to let you guys know about. One is get into it up to your elbows. So I'm a different kind of leader because I would rather be on the floor, under the belt, working on the robot with the team. I don't want to come in the building and see my face on a screen. I'll come in through the loading dock. I'm here to, my wife loves me. I keep destroying clothing on the road working on projects. But get into it because it's just as important to understand what does it do as it is what it doesn't do. That's how we evaluate good technology. And today, I think in a lot of our businesses, we have people making technology decisions that have no clue functionally or realistically what they're really choosing about. So get down into there. The other thing from a people standpoint, that humanizes you in a big way when they see you there on third shift, still working on something that you weren't able to get hammered out. That builds friendships, the network gets stronger, and they can really believe the stuff that you're saying is really how it is. So being an American bouncing around the globe, that's really been awful helpful for me. Again, on talent, we're always going to have specialists. We're an engineering company, and that's awesome. I love our engineers. I work with them all the time. But I want somebody that took some programming in high school, has some chemical or mechanical engineering experience, has a double E. I learn about their hobbies. A lot of times, these guys are building cars. They're doing all kinds of different things. Those skills, when they come together and you can see the raw capability of what we're testing, they find places to go do this that I never would have thought of. We've got a guy right now that's working on MEMS thermocouples, trying to harvest energy and create electricity from a paint line dryer, which we've never done before. And this was a small kit that I bought the guy for like $250, and he's working on an array of it now in order to try to recoup some of the power use that this furnace actually has in our facility. So lots of stuff like that going on. Dedicated resources. So I think that the regional positions really needed to be people that this is what they primarily did. Everybody wants to give you a fraction of a fraction, but the people that are really your interface in the geographies, you need a lot of their time and you need to buckle them down. And then the other thing is safe spaces. So, when I started, I'm the guy that scares the hell out of IT and a lot of other areas of the business because I'm here to try stuff. And if it breaks, that's great. I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to move on and do something different. But having the ability to create places, either physically or electronically, to allow people to work with software that does not cause great risk to your business is super important. So, I'll give you a tip on one right now. I'm working with a startup called Prove, P-R-O-O-V. I don't know if you guys have heard of these guys. But what they do is they virtualize an entire enterprise class information system, and then you can do red team testing for security on it. You can integrate different interfaces to it. And this is kind of a great sandbox to give people because you can say, I wouldn't ever set them loose in my ERP system in North America, but I got this. I said, go play. See what happens. See how do we make this work? Those kinds of things are super important. And then last but not least, really, innovation is very important, kind of bridging the transformative purpose of your organization down to kind of the daily life, right? So for us, we say we want to provide sustainable, efficient, reliable, connected, safe energy to everybody on the planet. That's huge. We hire new people and we lay that on them, and they're super excited and energetic about it because it is a save the world mission. Then I put you in a cubicle and I give you Windows XP and Microsoft Excel, and your excitement level really starts to drop off. Giving them the ability to be connected to larger processes, to have them own something. I've got an ADP in Tennessee at one of the plants that I work with. She's a young lady, advanced development program graduate. So she's pretty young, she's pretty new with us. That she ran an entire augmented reality platform solution for a very complicated line. And now anytime anybody comes for a plant tour, she's the first one, talks to executives, heads of state, everybody. She's the first one there. The glow from this lady makes all the sleepless nights and everything else worth it. So, really putting people in positions that take them out of the drudge and give them the tools really, really makes a huge difference. It's super rewarding for the employees, and it's super rewarding for those of us that get to do it. Couple observations to leave you with. The problem is a gift. As a guy that was in CS&Q, we don't make customer satisfaction and quality. We love our TLAs, the three-letter acronyms at Schneider. We don't make Pop-Tarts. We make stuff that goes bang if you do it wrong and people get hurt. We respond like nobody else when there's any kind of a customer issue. For those of you who may not have that life or death situation, customer issues give you lift. You can get executive attention, funding, support in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine if you have a creative solution that you're able to offer up and pitch. So look for these situations. If you're having a hard time getting something off the launch pad, try to find those opportunities to improve customer experience or deal with a big gnarly problem that your business hasn't been able to solve. The Jack or Jill, I know we've kind of beat this to death, of all trades is really, really critical here. Don't focus on your profiles. There are key skills that are required, but at the same time, some things can be taught. Energy, excitement, passion, logic. These things, a lot of times people either have them or they don't have them. So have an open mind. And then lastly, I challenge everything. Obviously, I have a background that allows me to make sure that I don't build a bomb and then go sit on it. But the key is try something different. If the project team's not moving forward, swap people out. Give them some new tools. Try open source software. This stuff doesn't need to cost a lot of money. I don't know if everybody knows what GitHub is. There are thousands and thousands of AI manufacturing applications that are available on GitHub that cost nothing. Go see. Go to the Gemba, try to do some different stuff, and it'll really make a big difference. And then also, as you're getting started, you may not have the skills, but there's people in this room that do. Part of the beauty of this session is so many people from past meetings have come to me, and we've worked on other projects together. We bounce things off each other all the time. Leverage the network to figure out, how do I get it off the ground? And maybe share some of the things that you're working on. So maybe there's something that you can copy. Maybe there's something that I can borrow. And it can really speed up the ability to actually try something different. So anyway, I'd like to thank Lora for having me. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to me here today. I'm going to be around for the remainder of the week, but all my contact information will actually be in the slide deck, so if anybody wants to grab me, feel free. So enjoy the rest of your week.
Okay, we're not letting you off the stage yet, okay? So let's stay a minute, because we're running a little early, which is a good gift.
Well, you
Thank
started early.
I did start early. So, Brian, what's your definition of digital?
That's a loaded question.
I know.
Digital really is about applying digital technologies. So it's computer-based technology at the most fundamental aspect.
Okay. Now, I remember when Annette and I were talking about the creation of this kind of role, and should she fund it, or should it be a return on investment type of initiative? How do you judge success, and are your investments driven by return on investment kind of calculations?
It depends on the audience. So I think that when you do something that has the broad impact of a program like this, you can find value in other places. So I'll give you a good example. We may look at projects in a particular region that on a project-by-project basis maybe didn't hit the ROI statement necessary for those projects to go to production. But when I go back and I actually look at we've got a thing that we run every year called People Survey, People Link, and they look to see what is our employee net promoter score looking like. Each one of those points is worth a very substantial number per employment, both from a retention standpoint and from a capability standpoint of the employee. So we've used some, I'd say, non-traditional ROI logic to explain these kinds of things. And again, culture is fluffy. It scares the heck out of everybody, but there's huge value to be had there, and you just have to find the way to articulate and tell the story. But we've got other projects where, I had one of my interns work with me. There was an open source piece of hardware that's a parametric tracker, and she wrote an AI algorithm that now is going to save Schneider $800,000 this year, and potentially one of our customers close to $3.5 million. And that project cost me 20 grand. So you're going to have a lot that are a swing and a miss, but as you start to get more opportunities in the pipeline, democratize the technology, get more people playing with it, I really think the payback is in year 5 and 6, personally.
Years 5 and 6 of program?
Coding. Yeah.
Or coding?
Yeah.
Okay. So your initial years, it was kind of Brian and, arms and legs and sleepless nights. When did you start to get people on the team, and how did that evolve?
So, well, again, I think part of the issue was I'm just a little chubby American dude. Convincing people to play ball with me globally is something that, based on the culture, first you have to actually show that you're getting stuff done. So when we got enough things in the win column, then I had people, you can always tell when you're tipping because people start jumping into the boat with you as opposed to trying to push it away from the dock on you. That was one big deal for us. The other thing too was as we started to show some of the things that we were doing had many, many uses that we were able to copy and paste as opposed to creating new solutions for everything and just make minor adaptations. That was also a real big, gravitas swung in a big way on that too.
So there's some technology providers in the room, and you get to talk to a lot of technology providers. What advice would you have for them when they talk to an innovator?
That's a great question. I would say the best engagements that I've had with technology providers is when they decide to get in with me. So I made the analogy about being in the plant working under the conveyor belt. Actually, that happened a few weeks ago. I was in Monterrey, Mexico, and I had a vendor that came from Israel. I only met the guys on Friday. They flew from Israel on Sunday. They were on the line with me Monday. I say, put your money where your mouth is. Come and learn about what it means to do what we do. Learn about my customers. And then we'll figure out together, how do I help you adapt your platform so that I'm almost like your inside sales guy. I can help to understand, does it make sense? Can we leverage it? And if so, how do we have that discussion instead of just, shooting quotes back and forth and you harassing me every other week to find out if I'm going to sign something. It's a very different type dynamic.
Okay, questions for Brian. I think Brian has one of the best jobs in supply chain. Love his energy, love the work that they're doing, love Annette's vision to fund this kind of effort. Does anybody else have a Brian in their organization? Because I think Brian's kind of unique. Okay, Paula, you got a question?
I don't have a Brian necessarily in my organization, but I might have.
Rick, can we run the mic? Can you get a mic? Okay, we're going to get a mic to you so people that are listening. I'm actually excited in the number of people we got listening. So, there are too few Brians, I think, in this world. We look at projects very traditionally, fixed ROI, as is to be state. And it's really hard to have an as is to be state when you're innovating, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, there's one mode where you have an impetus, you have a thought leader, you have a catalyst. But at the same time, what we're trying to push people to is it's everybody's responsibility. Reconsider what you're doing. There's, even just from a general knowledge perspective of robotic process automation and some of the software capabilities that are available today, people need to start to say, is what I'm doing really making sense? Is this adding value to the customer? Is this adding value to this business? And is there a better way to do it? That's a dialogue internally we really, really are trying to push people to do so that you don't necessarily need, a pillar. It's much more spread throughout the business.
Can you say your name and your company when you ask the question for the people on the line? They've asked for it. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Polly Mitchell-Guthrie from Kinaxis. I was intrigued with your comment about the thousands of AI apps on GitHub. So GitHub's great. I think there's a lot of great stuff out there, a lot of not great stuff out there. So my question is, how do you vet the applications so that you ensure quality and rigor behind the code that's there? Do you have your army of interns who may have passion and excitement, but how do you avoid having the tail wag the dog, as Laura was saying earlier?
Great question. So there's a few different ways to go at this. On the one hand, a lot of the GitHub repositories that we end up working with are more or less snap-ins. They're Docker objects, things like that can work on another platform. So IBM's got some great stuff as a student or an experimenter's license that you can go work with the iSuite and actually do some automation, some vision, things of that nature. We're trying to not necessarily, consider those things complete and total solutions in and of themselves, but in a lot of cases, when you've got people that have general software understanding, they may have done some machine learning stuff, giving them something to look at, to see it move and work, in a lot of cases really informs them so that they can get past that first level of learning without an awful lot of assistance. And then the other thing is, I know that there is some real crap on GitHub. Trust me, I've stumbled through a fair amount of it myself. But at the same time, the community there is fantastic. So you can ask questions that you couldn't even imagine. Who am I supposed to, in my business, the skill doesn't exist. Who am I going to call to get this stuff answered? You can plug into resources there. And I can't tell you the number of times where, I'm looking at something and I had a question about a branch. And I posted a question and I have somebody from MIT hit me back in 45 minutes. It's a network that really allows you to level the playing field. So, you got to be careful what you're doing. Do it in a protected place, but also leverage other infrastructure and schemas to kind of make sure that you're not, pulling the pin out of the grenade and throwing it either.
So kind of trust and verify?
Trust and verify, and we do a lot of work with virtualized environments too. So I've got a whole bunch of VM images that I pass out to people, so say, please don't do this on your own computer. Do this in the VM so that it's containerized. But we've got a lot of things in place that actually help people to get past those types of questions.
Too few people have virtualized environments to be able to do that work. Yeah. Other questions for Brian? Okay, back of the room, yes?
Hello, my name is Paul Greifenberger. I'm with Transvoyant. We're a software company. Question I have for you, Brian, is I noticed a lot of the POCs, there's an emphasis on speed, 90 days to get to technology proof. Within that window, though, I'm wondering, how do you go beyond technology proof into proof of value within that time frame?
So it depends on the maturity of the technology. You know, a lot of cases, we have the initial contact with a company, everything looks good, and it turns out that they're not ready for a POC. They need to have a proof of technology evaluation instead. So rather than going into the plant, we'll stand up some infrastructure to give them the opportunity to show us what it can do in a protected environment. Also, as part of the train, it's a foregone conclusion with most technologies. If it works out the way that it's supposed to, we'll go to a pilot, which would mean multiple geographies, more plants, whatever. But you need to actually, we're very clear about the hurdles that you have to clear before you'd be considered for evaluation for any other opportunities. And you know, kind of to your point, another thing that's been pretty interesting too, some of our POCs are so ridiculously successful that, like, if I don't manage the vendors, they get crushed by people that want it. So you might have this startup that's 50 or 100 people.
I think you got a lot of people who'd like to have that problem, Brian.
Yeah, you know, they have a $5 million valuation, and then all of a sudden they've got 50 people from this $25 billion monster calling them that will put them under. So, you know, there's a lot of components to managing that, but you know, I think we have to rate and rank the maturity of the technology before we decide what track it goes on for evaluation. Did that answer that? Yeah.
Other questions for Brian? How do you define connected? Was there a question? Larry, you got a question? Okay.
I want to see if you can leap forwards.
Okay, all right, we don't want him to sit on a bomb. What was it
Yeah,
you
that
said?
was-
Light a fire and sit on a bomb
Yeah.
or something like that?
Yeah, I thought that was cute.
Yeah.
Just leap forwards. So you've been mired in this for the last 4 years or 3 years,
Not
right?
mired.
But
It's been my honor, my
22
privilege,
hours
and
in
my
the basement
pleasure. Yeah.
coding is.
Yeah.
But so what's 2030 look like? Peek around the corner for us.
So for me, I think that there is going to be an increasing number of reduction of repetitive tasks. Today, we're just barely starting to scratch the surface. One of the AI technologies that's really going to make a huge difference for us is something that's called the generative adversarial neural network. And to make that simple, basically, you train one AI, and then you train another AI, and then you have the two AIs try to trick each other. And what it does is, just like if you had people playing cards with one another, their intuition, their capability to draw probabilities, it escalates much more quickly than if I only have one AI, and then I need to feed the AI thousands or millions of different samples for it to be able to interpret or have, you know, an appropriate ontology to tell me anything about what it's seeing. So I think that, you know, there's a few things that are going to happen very quickly. One, the ability to plug into enterprise class systems and harvest things like structured log data to intuit processes, what people are actually doing with the systems, and then use that data to create processes for the AI to duplicate those activities, thereby really eliminating the need for the people that are primarily doing these fairly manual processes. I think the other thing too is, right now, with the explosion of minor microcontrollers, like, you know, you can spend $50, $100 and have more power than an industrial controller had 10 years ago currently in your desk. I think that more and more people are actually playing with these things. The skill base, I don't think there's going to be a lack of skills. I think it's just accessibility for people and trying to do the right kind of change management. But I think the next generation of supply chain folks is really going to be software developers. I think they're going to be very much process and logic capable. And I think that we're going to see less and less people doing a lot of the repetitive activities. And you know, look at the drop in cost for robotics. I mean, just 5, 6 years ago, what an AGV cost. Today, I've got AGV as a service. I call them, I tell them, hey, you know, I want an AMR. They come, they drop it off. I use it for 6 months. I have a virtual conveyor. At the end of the period, I say, come get it. I'm done with it. Business models are iterating. Everything's getting cheaper from a software standpoint. You know, I think that we're generally just going to drop the overall head pressures on a lot of activities. But I can dream a lot bigger than that. It's going to take a glass of wine.
So let's have that glass of wine. And I say to you, in my research, where I'm seeing the trend, it's almost statistically significant, that leadership understanding of supply chain is a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
How does a person with energy, commitment, excitement commit and enlighten leadership?
I think that there's a few things. One, no matter who we are or what we do, you're selling. You need to be able to tell a good story, and you need to be able to tell a story in the way that your audience can actually understand it. And I think that in the past, as early as 5 to 10 years ago, supply chain, we're masters of the arcane. There's so many people that's the guy that's done this for 15 to 20 years. Nobody really knows what he does. Everything happens, and it's just kind of magic that goes that way. With the tools that are coming now, we're going to be able to, without necessarily having to have that army of single-purpose resources, be able to tell the rich story, and not only that, not have it be a static story, have it be something that a leader with minimal technology experience, maybe even a leader that doesn't know anything about supply chain, be able to draw inferences, as well as have the tools script for them. I see you're looking at this. I think what you really want to ask is about that. It's that self-awareness, the prescriptiveness, those things are really what's going to make a difference as far as informing the leadership. But at the current stage, I think that you need to understand, what the state of the state is with the people that you're talking to. And then you have to do everything that you can to bring it to their level. And, I have a lot of difficult discussions. Sometimes I have to have the same kind of conversation 5 or 6 times before they get it. But at the same time, I think that generally the population's understanding of the promise, we're going very quickly from science fiction to science fact. And it's much easier today for me to have these discussions than it has been ever before.
Well, I find legacy supply chain discussions are full of acronym and arcane terms. And when people are trying to communicate these new concepts, right, a lot of times I go into clients and they're like, whoa, Laura, I don't understand anything you said, right? And I got to back up because the new terms scare people and they don't know how to have the conversation. Do you experience that, and how do you get over it?
All the time. And it comes back to, again, to show me. So, for example, the concept of blockchain, which we've done a lot of work on in the past, I don't do just hi, this is blockchain. It's not just Bitcoin discussion anymore. I've got demos with physical equipment that I roll into a room, I put it on the table, and I show them. At this step of the process, you're Joe, do this. And then they see the blockchain iterate. We got a little truck that's got sensors in it. You drop it. You see something happen in the workflow or in the smart contract that's actually on the screen. Going from theoretical and very high level to something that people, we could have that blockchain discussion and I could trip all the mental fuses in the room in 5 minutes. Or I can get them something to play with which distracts them from their fear of the new words, the new concepts, and it just makes it much easier to get past that initial barrier. So have a demo, I think, is probably the short way to say that.
And solve a problem. I mean, I remember when you came to the Network of Networks and you were talking about blockchain, and I said, whoa, 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 tell it like you were telling your mother. And you started to tell it in the problem that you were solving, and suddenly the room lit up, right?
When I showed up, I was trying to figure out how do I do register mapping and control in a blockchain instead of in ladder logic and a PLC. And everybody went, so it was...
Again?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. All right, let's give Brian a big hand. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.